Margaret Hayes sat alone at the corner table of Romano's Italian restaurant, smoothing down the collar of her navy cardigan for the third time. At 58, she'd almost forgotten what first date nerves felt like. Almost. Her friend Susan had insisted on setting up this blind date, promising that Robert Chen was a genuinely good man who'd been widowed 3 years ago. Margaret had resisted at first, but loneliness has a way of wearing down even the strongest defenses. She glanced at her reflection in the restaurant window. Her graying hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and the soft lines around her eyes told stories of a life lived fully, if not always happily. She'd never married, never had children. For years, she'd told herself it was a choice. But lately, in the quiet evenings alone in her small apartment, she wondered if she'd simply been too afraid. "No one wants to date me," she'd confessed to Susan just yesterday, her voice barely above a whisper. The words had hung in the air between them, heavy with years of rejection and disappointment. Margaret had tried dating in her 30s and 40s, but each relationship had ended the same way. The men always wanted someone younger, someone without her responsibilities. You see, Margaret had spent 20 years caring for her aging parents, watching friends marry and start families, while she managed doctor's appointments and medications. By the time her mother passed 2 years ago, Margaret felt invisible, like she'd missed her chance at the life she'd dreamed of. The restaurant door opened, bringing with it a gust of cool October air. A man entered, his salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled, his warm brown eyes scanning the room with gentle uncertainty. He wore a checkered flannel shirt under a brown jacket, and there was something immediately kind about his weathered face. This had to be Robert. Margaret raised her hand tentatively, and his face broke into a relieved smile. As he approached, she noticed he walked with the careful gait of someone who'd worked with his hands all his life. "Margaret," his voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I'm Robert. I hope I haven't kept you waiting." "Not at all," she said, managing a smile despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Please, sit down." They settled into an easy conversation over breadsticks and water. Robert explained he was a carpenter by trade, still working part-time though he was 62. His wife, Jennifer, had died from cancer 3 years ago, leaving him to raise their 9-year-old triplet daughters alone. As he spoke about Emma, Lily, and Sophie, his entire face transformed with love and exhaustion in equal measure. "I'll be honest with you, Margaret," Robert said, his fingers fidgeting with his napkin. "Dating at my age with 3 young daughters, most women run for the hills. I understand it's a lot to take on, but Susan spoke so highly of you, and I thought maybe I should try." Margaret felt something shift in her chest. Here was a man apologizing for the very thing that made him who he was, a devoted father putting his heart on the line despite knowing the odds. She reached across the table, surprising herself, and gently touched his hand. "Tell me about them," she said softly. "Tell me about your girls." Robert's eyes lit up, and for the next hour he painted pictures with his words. Emma, the oldest by 4 minutes, was the serious one, always reading and asking questions that made him feel like he needed a philosophy degree. Lily was their artist, covering every surface with drawings and seeing beauty in things most people overlooked. And Sophie, the baby of the family, was their spark of mischief and laughter, always ready with a joke or a hug. They missed their mother every single day, Robert said quietly, his voice catching. "And I try my best, but there are conversations I don't know how to have with them. They're growing up, and I'm terrified I'm failing them." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not failing them. They have a father who loves them enough to be scared. That's not failure, Robert, that's devotion." The evening flew by. They discovered they both loved old black and white movies, that they'd both grown up in small Midwestern towns, and that they both took their coffee the same way, with just a splash of cream. When the check came, Robert insisted on paying, his old-fashioned courtesy somehow touching rather than condescending. As they stood outside the restaurant, the streetlights casting a warm glow on the autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalk, Robert turned to her. Would you like to do this again? I had a really wonderful time tonight, Margaret." She wanted to say yes. The word was right there on her tongue. But fear, that old companion, wrapped its fingers around her throat. Robert?